Bonjour. Hi, I'm Steve Smith, and for 25 years, I've been trying to teach Rick the art of good living in France, while he taught me, by introducing him to some of my favorite people whom I have met since being raised there on and off as a child, while he taught me the science of guidebook writing. Together, it's been a mutually, I think, beneficial 25 years, productive and great fun, and the ability to learn lessons for travelers that I've been able to put into the books thanks to Rick has been a joy. Today we're going to France. I'm going to focus on Paris with the heart of France. Let's see if I can do this right. There we are. Here's the country. Here's our destination, and there's Paris in the the central northern part of France. I'm going to focus pretty much on this region of France, and in the afternoon I'll hit the southern part, as I've mentioned. The country, to give you a sense of scale and location. The Atlantic Ocean, of course, is off to the west. To the south is the Mediterranean. It's about the same distance to go from Paris to Rome or Paris to Madrid as it would be Seattle to San Francisco. That helps put things in order. It's about an hour flight, and they leave like every half an hour from Paris to Nice. These are the two important airports you could fly into, the easy airports, Nice and Paris. I flew into Paris on my last trip and flew out of Nice. I highly recommend considering something like this. I would reverse what I did if I were you, depending on the time of year naturally. If you're going early in the season, I would fly into Nice because it's warmer there earlier, substantially, and then fly out of Paris as the weather gets warmer. If you have the choice, Nice's airport, having just flown out of there 2 days ago, is a piece of cake. It's lined with palm trees. It couldn't be easier. Paris, on the other hand, is a large city, and you have to get used to that airport. All right. The reason you should go to France. Why? It's about diversity, I think. In this one country, 80% the size of Texas, you can get more diversity than almost anywhere else that I know of. And no better metaphor for that is the cheeses that you can buy in France. There are over 460 different kinds of cheeses in this country. And you can taste every one of them if you're patient, right? From Paris in the north, the great city of Paris, which is really, honestly better than ever, to Nice in the south, southern eastern corner. This country delivers pastoral beauty in the northern Norman farms like this, with coquelicot, poppies, okay, they call them California poppies, but these ones are red, on a regular basis in May and June principally. To the south, weather changes entirely. Dramatic hill cliff-hanging villages like this and lavender fields are what you get when you travel to the southern part of the country. The coastlines. France has two distinctly different coastlines, from the Atlantic coast in the west, with its almost Olympic peninsula-like rugged beauty, to the southern Mediterranean, with sunny harbors waiting for your visit. An entirely different look at a coastline, right? And if it's the highest peaks in Europe that you must get close to and see up front, you must go to France, because it is in France that Mont Blanc is located, about 1,000 feet taller than Mount Rainier, the highest peaks in Europe being then just above the town of Chamonix. There are three distinct, though, mountain ranges in France. The Alps that I just showed you, forming the eastern boundary of Switzerland and Italy. To the west, the Pyrenees, the overlooked Pyrenees, are dry, balmy, forming the border with Spain and the Iberian Peninsula. A lot of people don't think about the Pyrenees. Interesting part of France to look at. And the central southern portion that most people have no clue about, the Massif Central, that harbors canyons like this, the gorges of Verdun, that I'll get into in depth. That's kind of a fun joke. This afternoon in my Provence and Riviera talk, right? All of this diversity geographically has lent itself over the years and the centuries and centuries to a cultural diversity as regions grew up independently of each other. This means that you can stay within the borders of France and one day be sharing half liters of beer next to kids in Lederhausen, right? And eating sauerkraut with bacon and fine wine sauces in the Alsace. And the next day, in the northwestern part of the country, looking at kids who look more Irish than they do French, and because they are more Irish than French in many ways, because they're Gaelic, the Brittany part of France, and eating crepes as their principal dish of the day. I had a request for an overhead light being turned off. Thank you. Or down. To the southern western part of the country, where the cuisine and the people look as Spanish as in fact they are, because for so many hundreds of years they grew up Spanish. And today, this Catalan culture, that extremity of Spain, is translated into street names on street signs as well as in French. And bon dia, the words for bonjour become Spanified. And paella, or paella as the French would say, is on the menu on a daily basis to the southeastern corner of France, where the devil may care what the heck Italian influence and pasta is on most menus. Here in Italy, here in this part of France, it was Italy until the late 1800s. So it's natural that you would have this kind of cuisine, this kind of culture in the country of France. Now, I like that. I like traveling around this country. When I get to research the book, I really feel like I'm going to different countries. When I'm in the Alps, I eat fondue. When I'm in the Riviera, I eat pasta, this kind of thing. I like that. But it's more than just a beautiful hill town and a sunny afternoon at a cafe waiting to treat you is France. In many ways, France is Europe's most important country to visit historically. For here, travelers can trace the whole of European civilization. From prehistoric cave paintings like nowhere else in the world, to Roman ruins that rival any of those in Italy, to medieval ruins. In the Middle Ages, the French constructed castles on a scale not seen before. And they cultivated Romanesque and Gothic architecture, for the first time building cathedrals, stretching them so tall to fill the empty space with stained glass windows, to tell stories of the Bible to people who were not literate. This happened first in France. And in the 15 and 1600s, French architects and engineers set the trends throughout Europe, dazzling people with their ingenuity. And in fact, it was the development of the Chateau at Versailles and chateaux like this, Vaux-le-Vicomte in the Loire Valley, that announced France's emergence as Europe's first economic superpower. What a country. In the 1800s, French grew the Impressionist art that's so famous to us today. And you can visit Claude Monet's gardens. We'll do that today, where he was so inspired, and by virtue of him inspiring other Impressionist artists to paint in the same style. And then you can visit museums carrying the art that was inspired. After visiting the site that inspired this artist, you can see the art that he created from it. How great is that? To go to the source of it and then see the product of that. France offers many opportunities for that, and I think that's what I'm trying to get across to you today. Today, France is still trying to be in the avant-garde of art production, with museums being constructed and renovated on a regular basis, like the Pompidou Center here, attracting artists, displaying art of contemporary artists throughout Europe in a marvelous way. A lot of Americans think that sounds pretty good. It's a beautiful country. It's not that far to drive or take the train if it's only 80% the size of Texas. And the food sounds pretty good, the wine sounds pretty good, and wow, there's good history here. I'd love to go if it weren't for the French. Thanks to waiters like this, I think that image, I think it's going away. I hear it less and less, but it used to be something we heard a lot. And I want to just deal with it head on today. You will get waiters like this. If it wasn't for the waiter, you would have had a great trip, or you'd go to France if it wasn't for the French, right? The important thing is to understand that this is a different culture than you're used to. They react differently to the same prompts than Americans do. To the French, walking down the street, as an example, smiling at people and saying hello to people you don't know is the first sign of senility. This is an American group. French group? The Americans. When I lived in France as a 25-year-old, the American Express hired me with all these people. This was, mind you, a few years ago, 25, 30 years ago, to go around the country and try to explain to the French what was it with these Americans who wanted ice cubes in their water glasses, who wanted an extra pillow, who wanted air conditioning and these kinds of things that they really didn't understand. It just didn't compute to them. It is now. There are ice cubes sometimes available, but air conditioning and other comforts, queen-size beds, bathrooms in all the bedrooms are largely there now today. So I think we'll see less and less of the misunderstanding than there used to be. And if you go through the back door and you slow down, and that's what I'm going to try and encourage you to do today, you'll be dealing much more with Jerry Garcia here, my favorite cheese farmer, right? Than you will with those waiters. And remember, when you see those waiters that I showed that image of before, They are not tipped. Their tip is included in the bill, so they're just paid to be efficient. They're not working for a tip, and you don't have to leave one, by the way. That's a good lesson to you. As Americans, I think you will leave one. So right now I'm going to say don't leave more than 5%, because you'll feel guilty, and probably it's good to leave a little bit of a tip, because they probably did have to work harder for you, because you don't speak French. The French people I know never tip, okay? Good, you know that now. I just saved you the price of the ticket for this class. But again, I think that explains some of the waiters' reaction to you. Okay, and if I can do one thing in the book, and I learned this from Rick, the most important thing I can do is put you in touch with, connect with locals. That's where I can overcome this gap and really teach you about the culture by meeting these people and let them teach their history lessons to you as well. Whether it's Sylvie Pagnard at the arena in Nîmes, or Mike, Michel, giving a wine tour in the Côte-du-Rhône region, or Claude giving a cooking class. There are so many resources I have put in the guidebook today that allow you as a traveler for just a half day, for 2 hours or whatever, to hook up with a French person. And I highly encourage you to do this somewhere on your trip that it sounds appealing to you. Maybe it's the D-Day beaches. Maybe it's a wine tour, maybe it's a cooking class, but get out of the normal circuit of your normal travel routine and do something different, connect with the people, take a walking tour so you can ask all those questions. And by the way, take notes so you have a bunch of questions ready to ask these people if you have them to yourself as a guide for the day, right? And another way to connect with the culture is with children. Kids are popular anywhere, and no more so than France. And the reason I have this image up here, Rick has 2 kids. These are grown. I have 2 kids. One of them's grown, one of them's still 12. But she can't seem to get past 12. But we're on our 25th edition or something of the book. We have raised our kids as we've written these books in France. And we can both tell you that it is a very kid-friendly country, not just because the people love kids, but because of the way the hotels work. They love traveling with their kids, and they're used to them. Right? So mini golf courses, swimming pools, relaxed cafes, easy ways to have meals that allow parents to travel in a good way. Traveling by transportation, choosing how you're going to go, it's a great country to travel to by train. I just did this 300 miles an hour from Paris to Avignon. It's remarkable how fast you can go on the trains. And they're crisscrossing France virtually everywhere now, from Paris to any big city, connecting most of the big cities in France today, almost all of them really. And then where they don't serve you, the local trains take over. I did my entire research trip this year by train. Every other year I do car, train, that kind of thing. And it just works brilliantly. For a lot of Americans, a rail pass is a great idea. For others, it isn't. Think of it before you go. If you get like 6 days of travel, and rail passes work that way, 24 hours of travel, as many trips as you want to take in a day. So if it's today, the 6th of April, you can go from Paris. You could stop in Lyon, the big city to the south, travel there for 3 hours, then go to Avignon, stop there for 2 hours, and end up in Nice the same day. I think you could do that physically. I don't advise it. But you could do that off 1 day of a rail pass, and it would cost you about $50 for that day if you bought about 6 days worth of a rail pass. That's a good deal. If you buy the 6-day kind of combination, it reduces in cost average the more trips you buy, up to 9 I think it is for a rail pass, right? So buy that before you go, invest before you go. Where the trains stop, buses take over. The country is really very efficiently served by bus because it has to be. France is very rural. Think about this, and when you think about your trip to France, compare it to Italy or Spain. When you think of Italy and Spain, you're thinking of cities. Madrid, Seville, Granada, Barcelona, Milan in Italy, Venice, Florence, Rome, Naples, da-da-da. In France, you're thinking of Paris and then what? Right? Paris and maybe Nice. Then it's a lot of small towns. That also, the Dordogne, thank you. But it's all rural almost, the chateau, the wine countries, the hill towns, etc. So that means that buses have to serve those places efficiently, and they do. And so do minivan tour operators. And I get more compliments about these guys than almost anything from the book. And this is a great way to hook up with people. If you can't get to those caves in the Dordogne Valley, or to a winery you want to go to, take one of the minivan tours I recommend in the book. I do for every single region in France. If you don't have a car, it allows you access to places you otherwise could never get to. It's brilliantly set up that way, and you get double bang because then you have a French-speaking, usually a college student commonly, or a young person who's still probably working on their English to drive you around for the day, and you'll probably join other travelers in that day. These things range from 15 to 20 euros to 80 depending on what you're doing, and if you have the person to yourself or not, this kind of thing. Driving in this country works great because of what I just told you before. It's rural. You leave Paris in probably a car would work perfectly fine for you. You get good, so you have the choice as you travel in France. Book the car before you go, much like the United States. Weekly basis is cheapest. Pick up in one city, drop in another. Here's the tip I learned on this trip is there's more and more a heavy penalty and just an extra fee if you pick a car up at an airport or a train station or drop it off there. Check. Look at your car companies, rental companies, and find out what the fee is. And the locals who I talk to say, just don't pick it up at the airport. Come into town for a day, pick it up the next day at the central downtown agency, depending on the size of the city. It's not hard to do. And you can save a lot of money sometimes. So remember that. Double check with Avis, Hertz, or whomever you're going through. Rent on a weekly basis, unlimited mileage, and then double check the drop-off or pick-up fee at airports and train stations. It may be that you have to pick it up at the airport. Makes total sense, no big deal. But if you have the option, consider that. A lot of people don't. Let's see, car rental also, small car, go small. I see Americans, you want manuals or automatic drive very hard to get. And when you get one, it's a big one. And driving in narrow medieval villages in a large car is not a good combination, right? So get diesel. Diesel is a lot cheaper than gas. Almost all the cars are diesel, except usually for these automatic cars. And remember, go smaller than you think you need. Really, you can get a four-door car with good luggage capacity that's much smaller than you really think you need as an American, probably. All right. And why would you rent a car? So you can go down roads like this. It's a joy to drive. The French are driving slower than ever now. I used to have to say that the only problem with driving in France is they drive in cars half the size of as ours and twice the speed. They don't anymore. This country has recuperated its image, and to the point where it used to be one of the most unsafe places. They had more accidents per capita or something like this 10 years ago. And they have so many strict regulations on it now that it is the safest country, I think, in Europe to drive. My advice to you as a driver is just go at a slow pace. They're doing it anyway. Watch the speed limit signs. They really are patrolled. If you're driving, look for cameras. They love the cameras on the side of the road. And they'll click you for 3 kilometers over the speed limit. That's 2 miles an hour over the speed limit. And the base ticket is like $80, and then it's per kilometer after that. So it doesn't matter that you're 3 kilometers over. Do you see what I mean? Obey the speed limits. Your car, starting in November of this year, is supposed to have a breathalyzer deal. 2 of them in the car. So double check with Hertz or Avis. This is a new thing. Don't be freaked out by it. They're not really enforcing it for a while, but that is the part and parcel of this effort to make driving safe in this country. The penalties for drunk driving in Europe, and particularly France, are far more severe than they are in the United States. They take it seriously. This means to me it's a great country to drive in, seriously. And also, by the way, last tip on the driving thing, I don't like to drive at dark on the rural roads. I don't know where I am. There's no lighted roads, etc. So get your stuff done before dinner, have dinner in the village, or just know where you are really well before driving at night. That's just caution. And the reason you drive too is you can go to places like this, really off the beaten path, where it is kind of hard to stop on the bus and pull out a picnic and have a lovely view like this. But with a car, you can do things like this and enjoy the beauty that France offers, right? Hotels, well, I love to list hotels, and I've just updated a lot of the books for hotels like this. The Hôtel du Dauphin. Here's the word on hotels. 2-star hotels like this in central locations, I think, are what you're looking for, even in famous places, like on the island of Mont Saint-Michel, right? With simple, basic bedrooms, 2-star hotels, all with private bathrooms, firm beds, clean, not that much imagination, to 3-star hotels that maybe are more what you had in mind in some cases, with lovely rooms like this, to 4-star hotels, like this, that have rooms that you think were meant for you, maybe. Right? And to modern €36 a night, side of the road, freeway, ditch it for the night because it's late and you're tired, tap hotels throughout the country. That's like $40 for as many people as you can fit in the room. These things are an anathema to atmosphere and ambiance, but they're very handy. My point in showing you this range of hotels is that they're available throughout the country. Mix it up. Stay in a couple of these so you can afford that 4-star hotel I just showed you. It's only €180 only. But that's the price of the Sheraton in downtown Seattle, $200. That hotel. Let's go back. Yeah? So mix it up. He who comes home with the most money doesn't win. If this is a 750-year-old hotel. By the way, Rick and I are doing a TV show, and we are filming it this summer in July, and we're staying at the Chateau de Pré, which this one is. But don't write that one down. There are many more in the Loire Valley that I think are just as good. This just happens to be the one that I think is more photogenic for the TV series. All right. And apartment rental's popular, really popular. In Paris, it's hugely popular because you can do it with another couple or two couples or kids and have your cereal in the morning and this kind of thing, and you don't have to pay for the very expensive breakfast at a hotel, which I think they are, but they're good. You can cook at night, you can shop at the markets and put it in your refrigerator at night, and you can kind of be local for a week. Remember, apartments are weekly based, Saturday to Saturday, almost always. In cities like Paris, Lyon, maybe some in Lyon, Avignon, yes, Nice, definitely. Some people, in cities, it's definitely possible to do apartment rental. And I like that because it slows you down and you're committing to a week in one place. Good Americans, good. Slow down. Housing in the rural parts of the country, same thing. No other country in Europe has a network of homes for rent like France does. And I know this because we own one of these homes. Wow. Thank you. 25 years ago, we bought a house. My parents have lived there. They're now 87. They live there 6 months a year in a house that looks just like this one. It's not this one. And we rent part of it out as a gîte. They call them gîtes. That's summer, home for rent on a weekly basis. There's 15,000 of them in Europe. You can find one anywhere. And I think a great vacation, by the way, and they're cheaper than hotels anytime, virtually. Unless you insist on a great view with a swimming pool and 4-star comfort, they're going to be they're going to be somewhere around $1,000 a week for a comfortable house to sleep 6. You can do the math. And I'm on the high end there for high season. More if you really want a big swimming pool. A week in Normandy at a house, a week in Burgundy, a week in Provence, or something like that is a great 3-week vacation. Think about that as you slow down, right? And bed and breakfast round off the accommodation options. Great places. Twice the cultural intimacy for half the price. I love B&Bs, and I list the ones I like the most. Now, I wouldn't want to stay in one every night because it obligates you to be nice to the people and to spend time with them. And I get tired of that after a while. But every so often, mix it into your itinerary, right? Right? And have a wonderful breakfast in the morning. And here's the deal on bed and breakfast. They're cheaper than hotels for the same quality of room. They're not always the cheapest option because I showed you have those like top hotels and 1-star hotels and cheaper hotels like this. But they always include, almost always I should say, virtually always include breakfast. At hotels, be ready. Breakfast, particularly in Paris, and Paris is the big cost item on your trip, having just returned from there. Plan for Paris, okay? Breakfast is commonly 13 euros for breakfast. That's about 15, 16 bucks for breakfast. Now, it's a buffet breakfast, so you get cereals and yogurts and eggs and a hard-boiled egg, kind of thing like that, and fruit and croissant. But that's times 4 people if you have kids. That adds up. Thus, the popularity of apartment rental, you can imagine, and or bed and breakfast, where it's included for everybody. You see the advantage there. So mix it up. And I want to warn you about one other thing. This is what's important for you to know. A lot of you, how many of you have been to France before? Yeah, that's amazing. God, you write the books. Wow. I love that. What a then you know, hopefully what I'm saying is true about the French. If you've been before, here's what's new to you probably, is that they've added a star category. It used to be 0 through 4-star hotels. 4-star was commonly the best hotel there was. Now there's a 5-star hotel. Now, what that meant, since they invited the new category in, is that the other hotel star classifications could bump up one if they had just enough, if they were close enough. As a 2-star, they're now a 3-star. That means they can charge more, even though the hotel is exactly the same as it was as a 2-star, trust me. Or a 3-star is now a 4-star. And the government gets more tax money because they pay a per-person tax on a daily basis. They're ingenious there. So just be ready. When you see 4-star hotels and 3-star hotels, and you say, oh my gosh, just think of the old 2-star system, 3-star system. It's inflated is what I want to say. Just be ready for that. Read the book. I describe it in the book. Read the book, and then you'll know what's going on. Okay, so accommodation, that's important for me to get across to you. On a food basis, Cameron, the guy who gave the last talk on the traveling budget skills for travel in Europe. Food you can be very reasonable on. The frustrating thing for me today is the average hotel in Paris is so expensive that people are spending all their budget on the hotels, and they don't have anything left over for food. This is what the restaurateurs are telling me, and I understand it because hotels in Paris, not the rest of France, are pricey, so you want to book early there. On a regular basis, I've mentioned breakfast before. Okay, you can go out, you can go to a cafe, and just get a croissant and coffee if you want. Although I usually pay the money for breakfast because I want the full buffet at a hotel so that my stomach is full because I'm sightseeing. I'm out there running around for the day. I'm not going to the office and sitting down. At lunch, salads for lunch, 10 euros. Tax and tip included. Everything you see on the menu at a restaurant in France, it's like going to Oregon and there's no tip. Isn't that cool? So everything I'm telling you, that's all you have to pay. If you have a beer and it's €4, it's 14 euros. Leave €1 for the waiter if you want to, then it's 15 euros. That's it. So you know it's clean, it's nice, it's straightforward. 10 euros is a standard price for a salad. That's enough lunch for me. Okay, that's $12, $13 lunch, right? Dinners or lunches, cafes like this are throughout France, and they're handy places to get basic stuff, and stuff at almost any time of day. That's why it's handy, particularly for families. The kids are hungry at 6. Restaurants don't open until 7 or 7:30 if you're lucky. Go to a cafe, right? There you can, and get what you want on a daily basis. Little bistros are the next level up. Like salads. If all you want, I'm going to back up. If all you want is a salad like I showed you before, if all you want is French onion soup, go here, go to a cafe. You're done. That's all you need. At a bistro, anything nicer, you have to order a main course. You don't have to order a first course. This is important. And at a bistro like this, with a chalkboard commonly written in Paris, a meal like this. Oh, this is my last night meal, by the way. Before I came, now this is in Nice, I want to tell you. This was my first course. Now, I don't know if you can see, that was a crab cake there, or some kind of crab deal, at a bistro, right? I had that, and then I had the main course, which was 2 things of tuna over ratatouille. And that is bigger than it looks. I could barely deal with that. I was starving at the time. I didn't need the first course, in other words. That's 22 euros for a 2-course menu. The word menu in France is a set sequence of items. When you want to go into a restaurant, if you ask for the menu, they're going to give you something about an organized menu of 2, 3, or 4 courses. The word for the menu is la carte. Remember, we as Americans, what do we say when we want something off the menu? We say à la carte, from the menu. So I don't know how we got the word menu to mean something different. But in France, I ordered a 2-course menu, and this is what I got for 22 euros. Right? Tax and tip included. Yes, in downtown Nice, just as it virtually, I mean, the same thing you can do in Paris. But I thought that was pretty cool to take a picture of my Thursday. This is fresh food. I mean, this is Thursday night. It's still good. All right, you can, and I just like hotels. You know, he or she who comes home with the most money doesn't win. Mix it up. Every so often, eat at a lovely restaurant. On a daily basis, you can just have the main course. Back up. That's 16 euros. So that would have cost you $19, right? Or 18, whatever it is, with the exchange rate 1.3. That's all you need. That's all you need to order, and it's probably enough. Typically, what my wife does is she orders one of those, and I get the 2-course menu. And sometimes I just get, as 2-course menu, you can get the main course and dessert. So I do that, and then she eats my dessert. I usually don't get near it. You can share those things. You can share the first course. You can share the dessert course. This is important for you to know because you're worried about the French judging you at a restaurant. I know you are. It's okay. Believe me, I ask cafe owners all the time. And if somebody looks at you funny, just shine them on. The French look at everybody funny. It's not because you're American. I really mean that, and I go through these conversations with the cafes on a regular basis. Okay, let's move on. Fancy restaurants, 40 euros for an amazing meal. Okay, this is $54. All right, but this is your splurge once in a while. This is, by the way, the meal at that chateau that I showed you before, just because I thought it'd be fun to show you that. And it's a joy to be able to put people in touch with beautiful places to have dinner. Even if the cuisine isn't as good as the price, and it's not expensive, the view setting is worth it. So you choose. You mix it up, have cafe dinner some nights, picnic dinner some nights, and then enjoy this beautiful view from the city of Dome, the village of Dome in the Dordogne region. Yeah. Credit cards. Practical stuff. Okay, how are you going to pay for all this stuff? That sounds pretty good. Now you got to pay for it, right? Well, I keep hearing about people being nervous about their credit card not being valid or whatever anymore. And it's true that if you use automatic machines for things like gas and there's no attendant around, for freeway pay stations these days, for train tickets from a machine, you need a chip and pin credit card, which is what this one is. It's got that little chip pin right there. And you can get those. They're usually, now the technology is changing faster, the price is. It hasn't been worth it for me to do so far because the fee for an annual basis was just too high. My normal Visa card and my ATM card work fine. I'm just back. I'm alive. I paid for everything, right? Now, when you're traveling, if you don't have one of these chip and pin cards and you don't have cash on you and you show up at the toll booth to pay your bill, because all the freeways are toll freeways, they're not manned anymore for the most part. It's automated. And then your credit card won't work as it used to, right? Because you don't have a chip and pin card. They'll find somebody to come and take your cash. I mean, it works. It really does. They have backup plans. But always have cash if you're going to travel normally like I do. I always have 50 euros at least, 100 euros in cash. And then if it doesn't work, there's always somebody to pay cash for that thing for. But don't you stress about needing one of these chip and pin cards unless you find one for a good deal at your credit union or something. Then it is a nice convenience. Then I think it's worth it. I really do. And more it's going to happen. More and more it's going to happen that we're going to have these in the States, and it's going to make travel to Europe, and particularly France, easier and easier, because you want to buy that train ticket fast, at the last minute buy the machine, and your credit card's not going to work, and you're fumbling for the 10-euro note in your pocket, and which is kind of a headache. For a lot of people, all that stuff just makes them tired, and they would rather metaphorically share their bottle of wine with 20 other travelers and go on a tour. Right? That's why we lead tours. Now, we do have people who want to keep that bottle of wine to themselves and travel independently. That's why we write the books. But we do and that's why we write books. So you can be your own guide. And that's what I'm talking about today. But for a couple minutes, we do lead tours. Ooh, what, did I go past? I missed a slide. We do lead tours. We have 6 different itineraries that cover France. And these are smart for you independent travelers if you don't want to go on a tour to use as an itinerary planner for your own trip. I think always take an organization that you like, whether it's a biking organization or whatever, and study their itineraries and maybe go by them. 11 days in Paris in the heart of France, which is what this talk is about today, but I'm expanding the regions covered. To the Loire Valley to the south of France in 13 days, wine regions of eastern France. It's not really a wine tour at all, but we go through all the wine regions, and that's where all the cities and sites are. In 14 days on the eastern part, to a brand new tour, the winter tour that we're doing of a week based in Nice. I've always wanted to do this, and I was there when there was a tour going on. It was great fun, in the off-season primarily. A week based in Nice, to 8 days, combining the French and the Spanish sides of the Basque region, which, by the way, is a very cool tour. Not people's first choice usually, I get it, but someday in your life you'll be surprised by the richness of the Basque region. The tours that we do are about learning. Rick calls our guides teachers. The other job I do at Europe to the Back Door is I hire all the guides and train them when I'm not doing guidebooks. And they're teachers. They're trained to be good teachers and to give lessons, and that's why you would take a tour. You can travel in France. You don't need a tour. Anybody in this room can. It's not hard. It really isn't. It's just, do you want to go to the trouble of setting up your hotels and doing all the sightseeing, reading, and knowing all that stuff in advance? And you learn more with the guide. Our guides get you well-oriented. Local experts like Malcolm Miller, who does our tours in Chartres for the Loire Valley to the South France tour. We pick the experts that I find in the guidebooks, or Rick does, on any tour. It's great. We have this advantage of writing guidebooks, and we use that information for the tours. It's a great advantage. Our guides typically lead a tour in the morning, get you well oriented to the city for the first half of the day, then leave you alone for the second half of the day to be in front of the art if it's Paris, on your own. So you're not always with 24 other people walking around. But it is fun to come home at the end of the day, particularly for singles, people who are traveling on their own, and have a group of friends, well, in the middle of the day, to share a potluck picnic with, or a dinner with. The advantage of a tour, of taking a tour, we take 24 to 28 people on our tours, is that you have a group of friends who probably have the same mindset that you do, and it's nice to meet those people. Oftentimes, the greatest part of the tour that they take with us are the other people that they meet, is the other people that they met on the tour. We use the same hotels that I'm talking about today, the same ones I write up in the book. I get to choose them. We get to choose them from the research we do. That's an advantage. And we use a bus that's a full-size bus with 24 to 28 people, so there's always an extra seat next to you if you want. All right, let's go. Our France tours, by the way, are selling out this year, and we're getting ready for next year, 2014, believe it or not, already. But there's still seats available on many departures, mostly the fall departures, I believe. Let's go. Let's go to France. Let's go where I just was, where it was the coldest winter since 1880. I'm researching with gloves on my fingers. I couldn't believe it. Gene Openshaw, by the way, who's the co-author, one of the three of us who writes the Paris book with Rick, he does the history. He's our Leonardo da Vinci at Europe to the Back Door. He and I are there together. We do it on a regular basis, and we divide up the city on a daily basis. And it is, even in the cold, and exceptionally cold weather in March when we were there, it's astonishing. It's a flat city with a river running through it. Flat city with a river. All the beauty is man-made in Paris. And all the stuff I'm about to tell you is updated in the 2013 book. Oh, pardon me. It's a wonderful city. Winter, on the Champs-Élysées at Christmas season, but all winter and summer, where they do all sorts of fun summer festivities, like the Paris Plage, right on the river, where they bring in tons and tons and acres of sand and create sand volleyball courts along the river in July and August. Hotels are small. Hotel rooms are small. Get ready for this when you go to Paris. They are smaller than you're used to. You'll pay a lot for that small room. Now, this really is a single room, but it helps me make the point. And I pick 4 neighborhoods in Paris for you to stay in. If you haven't booked your hotel yet, consider this, that this is a way of breaking down a city of 10 million people, is by neighborhood. And I'd rather have an average hotel in a great neighborhood than a great hotel in a crummy neighborhood. And there's a lot of great hotels. There are not that many crummy neighborhoods. They're just boring neighborhoods, I think, compared to the ones that I get to choose that Rick and I like in Paris. So this is the Rue Claire neighborhood. This is the Marais district with its narrow medieval streets. Here's the Luxembourg Garden neighborhood where you can surround a beautiful park. And for budget travelers, the newest neighborhood we've added with lots of listings for hotels and, by the way, restaurants is the Montmartre area at the base, not all the way to the top, at the mid-size up that hill in Montmartre. The idea is that we list restaurants and hotels by neighborhood. You don't need to leave your neighborhood in Paris for a good restaurant. Trust me, every neighborhood in Paris has a good restaurant. Isn't it nice to know that I can walk out my door at night and not have to get on a subway or a bus and go to a cool Basque restaurant, because there's one, or a creperie, or a seafood place, because there's one in my neighborhood, because we were able to focus on those neighborhoods and provide that kind of listing. Also, our favorite cafes, nightlife spots, handy other resources, laundromats, and this kind of thing. This allows us to set you up as a traveler. Now, you can find your hotel room through Booking.com or Priceline or whatever those things are that you might be using, but try to find them in the same neighborhoods we recommend. Then our book supports you. Do you see what I mean? And be wary of TripAdvisor in those comments, please. I hear about it all the time when I'm researching. I think it's a great counter second opinion, just like our guidebook is to people at TripAdvisor. Use it that way, but I would never just book something based on TripAdvisor. All right. Then you also want a museum pass. So book your hotel, by the way, now in Paris, as soon as you can, because it is busier. It's a funny country. It's a tale of two countries. This is the image I'm left with after my trip. There's Paris, and then there's the rest of France. For some reason, Paris is really popular, and the rest of France is kind of quiet, comparatively. It's all comparative, relative. So Paris is hard to find hotel rooms, and I didn't notice from people talking to me that there was much trouble in the rest of France. Not that early April was a good judge, but talking about through the high season, and I always talk to them about availability, etc. All right. Book now, get the values that we list in the guidebook before they get gobbled up. You want a museum pass. Museum passes in Paris, 2, 4, and 6 days. They're really good moves. For a museum pass, it includes almost all the sightseeing that you want in 2 days, 4 days, or 6 days of travel. Right? And for the most part, you get to cut to the front of the line with the museum pass, and you don't have to stand in a ticket line. And so it's very efficient, plus it's a good deal. It saves you a lot of money. Versailles alone, if you do the sites in Versailles, do them all, it's 25 euros alone for 1 day. Right? I think the 4-day pass is 54 euros or something for 4 days. One of those days will be 25 euros alone, to give you an idea. The Louvre is 14 or 15 euros, but you're going to do 2 museums in a day probably, and it's good through till midnight. A lot of sites are open. The Arc de Triomphe is open till 11 o'clock at night. Things like this. You can really make use of this pass all day and go into secondary sites that you normally wouldn't pay to go into. Hey, the museum, it's free. Might as well wander in here. Hey, that was pretty cool. That was a neat museum. That's really a big advantage. Every city in Europe should have this museum pass, because it really encourages you to be a better sightseer, I think, and to be a smarter sightseer. Yes, then also you want a metro tickets for the subway and bus. They're the same tickets that work in Paris for the subway and bus. If you're staying a week and it's valid Monday through Sunday, is a weekly metro pass. Okay, that's what I'm showing you here. That's kind of handy. Otherwise, just buy 10 ride tickets. You just get 10 of these little carnets. They're called carnets, like ChiliCon. Carnet. I know. 10 ride tickets. They turn out to be about $1.50, $1.75 each. And that's what most people want. Because if you arrive on a Wednesday, well, the pass doesn't work because it's done on Sunday, because they do it on this weekly basis thing, if you follow me. So 90% of us want the tickets to go on the metro. You can split them up between 4 of you, buy 4 or 5 of them. If you have kids, get the youth fare ones, etc. And that's what you want for the subway. The subway runs everywhere. It's like a spaghetti network of transit lines to get you anywhere you want to go in Paris. The bus is brilliant. I've listed a lot of bus lines. Get out of the subway and above ground in some days on your trip to Paris. It's too beautiful a city to be underground all day. The book does a good job of describing you how to do that. Bicycles are popular now. It's the rage now in Paris, I think. Safe to say. Bicycle riding, because you can rent bikes, pick them up in one place, drop them off at the other. I'm sure maybe you've heard about this new system of bike rental throughout Europe today, where you just put them in racks, pick them up one place, drop them off at another. And Americans can now use this system, or you can just rent a bike and go on your own. Through a bike rental agent group. Paris has turned all the bus lanes, made them available to bicycles, and then created bike paths like this throughout the city, making this flat city with this river running through it very bike friendly, all right? And there's even tours that people do today that are very popular. And I think if you're staying long enough, this isn't a high priority, but if you're staying long enough, doing something on a bike is kind of fun. All right, next lesson. Read the book before you go. We spend a lot of time trying to explain to you how to avoid lines. I just took this. So this slide is a week ago. It was on a Tuesday. Versailles closed on a Monday. I went on a Tuesday just to see if it was true. Let's go on Tuesday. I was closed on Monday. Let's go right away and be there at 10 o'clock. Not an original brainstorm. If you read the book, it said don't go on Tuesday, particularly at 10 o'clock is the worst time, 10 to 1. Go right away when it opens. Be there at 8:45 in the morning. This is just an example. Or go at 1:30 in the afternoon. There's no line, or virtually no line like this. How about that, Versailles? It's so easy to avoid this. And it's not only cold outside as it was when I was there, but the long line wasting your time. It's not good efficient use of your time. So please, pay attention, read up before you go, and then know when you're traveling in Paris how manageable the city is. These are where most of the sites are in the city. So here is the core of the city. Here is the Eiffel Tower to the Louvre Museum, all the way to the Bastille in the Marais district. And it's about an hour walk from here to here and from there to there. Flat. So you can imagine, I mean, if you could figure it out, I mean, no streets are straight, so it's not easy to walk anywhere you want to go easily. It's a manageable city size-wise. It's not that much to take on. Buses and subways, a couple stops usually do it for you. On your first day in Paris, let's go through a couple of days and see what I would do in Paris. This is what I would love to suggest that you do, right? Start your first day, and remember, in our Paris 2013 or 14, whatever book, we do these self-guided walking tours. And many of these walking tours, Rick has recorded as an app that you can download from our website for free. So you can have, through your MP3, whatever your device is, Rick's voice, reading the very same words that you're reading in the book with the images on your phone or whatever, iPad, whatever you're using, to walk you through the historic walk of Paris, where the city was founded. See Notre Dame de Paris, 1,100 years old, or built in the 1100s, pardon me. Tour the outside and in. Understand what you're looking at. Invest your time before your money. So read up on the walk before you go. Just a few blocks away is the zenith of Gothic architecture, the height of Gothic architecture, the Sainte-Chapelle. If the purpose of Gothic architecture was to stretch the church taller, right here, this is the chapel I'm pointing to at Sainte-Chapelle. If the purpose of Gothic architecture over Romanesque was to stretch it taller so that we could fill in spaces with stained glass windows, to teach people stories of the Bible through images in stained glass windows, then there can't be any greater success than Sainte-Chapelle. It's 9 euros covered with the museum pass. It's one of the only churches you have to pay to get into, right? And then there's concerts at night, and if you read your book carefully, it's lovely to go in there at night. You would think it'd be dark, but they light it from the outside, so you still get to see the stained glass windows at night, right? Then get out and see the rest of the city. This is the historic, I'm taking you on our historic Paris walking tour, which is a great way to start your day. Go along the river, cross the river into the Latin Quarter side, hang out at Shakespeare and Company, and then maybe end your sightseeing afternoon at the Museum of Medieval History in Paris. It's called the Cluny Museum also. Famous for its Lady and the Unicorn tapestry, but for me, and it's really great, it's Paris in the Middle Ages. And it's really it's a small museum, it's easy to do, it's manageable, covered with your museum pass. Maybe all you do is go in there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. See the Lady and the Unicorn. But what I love about this museum is at 5 feet tall, pardon me, they have, I think it's like 13 original panels of stained glass from Sainte-Chapelle. That cathedral the chapel I just showed you. Now, rarely can you see almost 1,000-year-old, or 800-year-old, I should say, stained glass right there. You can touch it. You can reach out and touch it. Normally, it's so high above you. You see what I mean? But this museum has them on display. And that kind of puts together, you see the history walk you were doing in the morning, and then seeing the thickness of the images and thickness of the glass and the lead that they used in it is really, really terrific. And end your day at the Luxembourg Garden. This all works perfectly, by the way. Hang out at the Luxembourg Garden. Do go local here. Grab a chair by the pond, as the locals do, and enjoy that day. Day 2, let's go to the Louvre Museum. Now, I'm going to show you a couple different images of the entry to the Louvre, because this is one of those sites. Paris is busy. I mean, that shot I showed you of Versailles is no exaggeration. The Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Versailles, and the Orsay Museum. Strategize those 4 places because they're very popular now. It's not because there's more Americans. I believe it's because there's Chinese travelers whose economies are growing, India, Brazil, etc. And they're swelling the ranks of people going to these sites. Okay, we just got to be smarter. We can do that, right? So one way, okay, so Louvre Museum, the greatest museum, arguably, of fine arts in Europe. It's crowded. Right? It's going to be crowded. Go on a tour. This is Elizabeth, one of our local guides. You can book her on your own. They have regular walking tours at the Louvre Museum for €6. That really helps with crowd management if you want. In English, you can take our walking tour. You can have Rick's voice recording your walking tour as you go. But strategize when you go. It opens at 9. Get there at 8:30. You'll be fine. You really will be. And that's worth that extra half an hour. 20 of 9, still okay, right? Or better, on Wednesdays and Fridays, go at night. It's open till 9:30 at night on those nights. This is a good idea. Our tours do this, our Paris tours, so that we can have, you don't have it to yourself, there's still people around, but the museum is far less crowded. Isn't that a good idea? Covered with your museum pass. And again, read our walking tour before you go. Understand what it is that you want to see and what you're looking for. The newest event at the Louvre Museum is there's a new wing of Islamic art that just opened. It's really pretty dazzling, pretty interesting. Gene was just there covering it for our book, and he may post something on the website. I don't think it's enough for you to really go out of your way for, but you'll see that it's a new part of our walking tour, or it will be different than what your walking tour has because it just opened. Then inside the museum in the Louvre, this is why you're here, to see great, phenomenal art like the Winged Victory, Venus de Milo, right? That's all here. Mona Lisa. Impressive in a museum that's the collection of the kings and queens of France over the years. Much like the Vatican in Rome is the collection of the popes, the Louvre Museum is the collection of the kings and queens of France over the years. Right. In that afternoon, allocate 3 hours to the museum in the morning. There's cafes spread throughout it so you can stop on your way, take a break because you're going to want to, rest, and then head up, do something in the outdoors in the afternoon. Right? And don't go to another museum. Go up the Arc de Triomphe maybe. Get a great view from the top of the Arc de Triomphe. It's a straight, here is this is the Louvre Museum if you could see better. I took the subway straight under the Champs-Élysées to the top of the Arc de Triomphe for this view looking back, and then spent my afternoon sashaying down the Champs-Élysées. A good antidote to the heavy art that I saw in the morning, we call it in the Louvre Museum, right? And tip. If you only have so much time in Paris, and you have to choose when you go to the Champs-Élysées, the great parading street in Paris, go at night. I think it's far more impressive at night, just like I do think the Eiffel Tower is more impressive at night than day. The Champs-Élysées is also. And that Arc de Triomphe is open at night, and the views are quite pretty at night if you want as well. It is 400 steps up, though, to the top of the Arc de Triomphe, and there's no elevator unless you're handicapped. So prepare for that. On a third day, let's do our Impressionist Day this day. This is how we organize our Paris week on our tours, by the way. So you could be doing the same thing on your own. You could be mimicking us. Go up to Montmartre, where these artists hung out in this village-like atmosphere in the 1800s. Artists like Renoir were inspired by what they saw, of the people living and dancing and playing in the village of Montmartre, as was this guy, Vincent van Gogh. Other sites motivated other artists like Toulouse-Lautrec in the same area to paint in their certain style. There was then sort of a synergy of creativity amongst the Impressionist artists that was born right here in Montmartre. What a great place for you to go to get sort of the inception of it all. Even Pablo Picasso at the Bateau Lavoir studied here and hung out in Montmartre as well. And I'm showing you this image just because I love the walking tours that Paris Walks does of Montmartre. This is one thing to consider when you're in Paris. Our walking tour, and by the way, Rick's doing a new recorded app of Montmartre that'll be out, I think, next year if you're going in 2014. If not, consider Paris Walks walking tour. I think it's €15 a person. They do a great job. I think some of their tours are better than others. It's listed in the book. But take their walk of Montmartre. That'll really make these artists come alive to you. And for a lot of Americans, I mean, really making sense of the Impressionist movement, understanding how important it was in its day, and also to subsequent artistic styles and movements, is really rather powerful to do. And then in the afternoon, spend your day seeing the art that they were inspired to create, right? Like in the Orsay Museum. Right? A renovated train station. You can see all the greats, really. It's a remarkable collection of your favorite Impressionist artists, from Monet to Manet to Cézanne to Van Gogh, Sisley, Pissarro. They're all there, and they're beautifully displayed for you. Watch crowds. The Orsay is open later on one night, I think it's Thursday nights, so that may be handy for you. Right across the river is the small museum that's neglected that a lot of people find just as appealing as the Orsay, which is the Musée de l'Orangerie, the Orangery Museum. Famous primarily for Claude Monet's water lilies. These, 70, 80-foot long paintings that he painted at the end of his career with cataracts, barely able to see, are just stunningly beautiful. And they're right across the river from the Orsay Museum. So there you go. You've spent your morning in Montmartre and your afternoon seeing what they produced, right? And you can even go further and go 15-minute walk away from both these places and study the architecture, or the sculpture, pardon me, for the man who did for sculpted art, what Claude Monet did for painted art, and see the museum dedicated to Auguste Rodin, also an Impressionist artist. And his work glorified romance, passion, and drama. This is the Burghers of Calais. It's a brilliant museum, the Rodin Museum is. It's included in the museum pass. If your museum pass is invalid, you just used it all up, you didn't have a day of validity, the great thing about this museum, and it's something to really consider, is the gardens are only €1. Maybe 2 now, but I think it's just €1. And you see a lot of his work in the gardens outdoors anyway. For a lot of people, that's enough. They've seen the thinker, they've seen what they wanted to see. They may not even go inside the museum anyway with their pass. But remember that if you're that's kind of a handy budget trick, I guess I want to say. So that's a busy day, an Impressionist day in Paris, but it works. And again, I think one of the reasons it works is that if you take the walking tour of Montmartre in the morning, either by using our book, you'll be efficient, or by going with Paris Walks. You'll be done and out of there. I wouldn't dally, because you're going to want time in the museums in the afternoon, and probably another part of another day to really enjoy the Impressionist art museums. Right? Then go to another day in the Marais district. This is a fascinating area. I spent 3 days there with Jean on this last trip. This is known as the Jewish quarter, but it's a small population of Jews. Before World War II, there were 80,000, I think, Jewish people living in Paris. Then after World War II, I think now it's 6,000 or 7,000, maybe it's more. I know I'm kind of close with my numbers, but it's quite a drop from then. But they're rebuilding their culture in Paris and in other cities in Europe. And using Paris as an example, I think, is a fascinating way to see how resilient this culture is. The Museum of Jewish History is remarkable. I just updated that chapter and wrote a few new things about it. Really brilliant in this neighborhood. It's also a young, hip, happening neighborhood. It's the center of gay life, I guess, in Paris. But it just shows its diversity, really, is this central neighborhood in Paris. This is the Place des Vosges. It's just a beautiful place to hang out. And it's also the location where they chose to build a modern art museum, the Pompidou Center, or Beaubourg, as it's called, with a remarkable collection of modern art from everybody. Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol, Velinsky, I don't care, Picasso, anybody you want to see is here at the Pompidou Center. Making sense of modern art is not an easy thing to do. Trust me, Jean does it in our book better than anybody I've ever seen. So go there, please. Try it. It's free with your museum pass. And look at his explanation in the book of modern art when you travel through the Pompidou Center, and bounce around and just go to the works that, you've always wanted to see Andy Warhol or Roy Lichtenstein, right? Try those out and see how that works for you. I think you'll be impressed by it. Other things to do in Paris that I just did that I just really liked. There's so much. How could I possibly tell you all about all of Paris, right? This is ridiculous. But I'm giving you the highlights, and I think for most people, this is good information on things that are happening now in Paris that are really worth your time and effort. The Opera House is beautiful. It has been organized in a better way than ever before. And I have this half day that I like to do that's called Grand and Glorious Paris. I just call that to myself when I'm wandering around, because I'm talking to myself all the time, right? Because I'm researching by myself. So I go to the Opera House at noon and tour the Opera House. Wow, is this an opera house? The Opera Garnier, the same guy who built the casino in Monte Carlo. Look at this. It looks like the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. The lobby is remarkable at the Opera House. It's about an era in the 1800s about posing and being seen and be seen than really seeing great opera, I think. And I think our write-up describes it really well. Then go next door. Right next door behind it is the department store built at the same age with the same architecture. This is Galerie Lafayette. Look at this department store. And what other department store in the world can you go to look over a dome like this and have a glass of champagne from a cafe while you're shopping? How cool is that? So I took this picture of these people having a glass of champagne, contemplating their shopping at the Galerie Lafayette, the same era and time as that opera house. Allow yourself to be drawn into that 1800s time period. So you see, this sort of approach to Paris that I'm doing for you is, historic Paris, Louvre, Impressionism is sort of, it's making sense of each day because there's so much to do in a city like this that it helps to sort of have a coat rack to hang your ideas from. I hope this helps you. Anyway, and then go to the roof. Don't miss the roof. It's one of the great views for free in Paris. The rooftop of the Galeries Lafayette and the other department store next door, the Printemps, which I think is actually a little bit better, are remarkable. This is the top of the Opera House, by the way, that you're looking right on. That's how close you are when I mentioned that before. Astonishing. All right. And then maybe a day for Versailles. Strategize this. I mentioned before, I don't have to mention crowds. It's good with the museum pass. If your museum pass burns out and you're on day 7 and you had a 6-day pass, or it's day 3 and you had a 2-day pass, you're going to pay 15 euros for the palace to get in. And then if you want to see Marie Antoinette's Hamlet in that area, it's going to be another 10 euros, right? So it is a remarkable place to visit. We'll be filming here this summer with Rick, so if you're interested, next year by September, I think we'll have a new TV show out on Versailles to see the house that Louis XIV built. Through his chapel, Baroque art. This is what I talk about France's emergence as Europe's first superpower. This is Louis XIV's doing, right? The true Hall of Mirrors, right? This is from the 1700s when this was built. So the opera in Paris follows that. To the gardens that are glorious, truly beautiful. Granted, you want to be there from probably mid-April, right about now on, to all the way out to the domain of Marie Antoinette, the queen who did not deal with cities very well, the Austrian girl who went out and created her own little reality. About a 30, 45-minute walk, or there's a rubber-tired train, or bicycles you can rent to take you out there. Versailles is so big and so vast that it takes most of a day to see well. You can just see the big palace and not worry about too much of the gardens or Marie Antoinette's domain in 3 hours. And then you can have the second half of the day in Paris. My advice in that case would be to either go really early, as I said, be there by 8:30, or leave downtown Paris. It's only a half-an-hour subway ride, and be there at about 1. And you'll miss, everybody's there 10 to noon. It's so predictable. We as humans are so utterly predictable. I could stand there with it, you could join me sometime. It's great fun to watch these things that are so predictable. Anyway, but allocate much of a day to Versailles. That's the important lesson on your trip, right? Okay. Then the grand finale. Seeing the Eiffel Tower. How do you see the Eiffel Tower? This is the biggest headache there is in Paris today. Well, you can go up the Eiffel Tower anytime if you're willing to stand in line for an hour at least, minimum. The lines there are the worst of anywhere. The nice thing is they have a reservation system now, so you can avoid the line. The bad news is you need to do it 2 months in advance. Yeah, 2 months at least. If you're going, they're booked up, I know, right now through June. To give you an idea, I was just there. So book way early on your reservation thing. The problem is, of course, by having to book ahead, you don't know what the weather's going to be. I hate that, but that's how it is. Now, there are walking tours that I list in the book that get you up the Eiffel Tower. It is 50 euros a person, but they do a good job. I went on it last year. I think it's quite good, and they get you up at the time you want to go. Or you just stand in line, or you walk up the stairs. You can do that, and it is really doable. I'm looking at you. You would be fine at that. And then you avoid a lot of the elevator line. But if it's important for you to go up the Eiffel Tower, strategize it. Think of it now. And by the way, if you get to choose, go at the end of the day. Just, be there during the light, as I showed you before. That was a picture from the Trocadero, looking across at the Eiffel Tower. Go at the end of the day where you still have light, then watch as the light drops down low, and then the city sparkles. It's really a beautiful spot to be. The location of the Eiffel Tower makes for great views at night. And then when you come down, of course, it's beautifully lit. And as I said before, I think it's one of those sites that's better at night than it is at the daytime. For a lot of people, and I want to give you the license to not go up the Eiffel Tower, because it truly is beautiful and understandable from below. And there are other really brilliant views of Paris from above. I went up the Montparnasse Tower on my last trip. You may have heard of the Montparnasse Tower. It's the one lone skyscraper, the big mistake they made in Paris. The good news is it's 15 minutes to the top. Elevator takes me right there, and it is a sensational view over Paris as well. And I didn't have to book it ahead at all. So I went to the base of the Eiffel Tower and I stared up at it. And then I went up the Montparnasse Tower. You can do that and not feel guilty about that, all right? It is, if you've never been on the Eiffel Tower, a great experience. I don't mean to say it's not. But don't feel like you've really missed something that important when you go. All right, at night, finishing your time in Paris, get out at night. I have shown you enough images of beautifully lit monuments at night. It should be coming across to your mind now that this country, and Paris more than anywhere, lights, they don't call it the city of light for nothing, right? It is gorgeous at night. There are a variety of ways to see the lights in the city. So the Eiffel Tower is one of them. Going on a boat trip right at sunset or in the night, don't go in the daytime, go at night. The boat cruises on the river are reasonable, and they're lovely at night. And also we do this taxi, I'm going to back up one slide, this taxi tour thing that's a great fun for most people. Oh, I suggested to Rick that we do this one time, this is about 4 years ago. Hey, let's take a taxi around and see what these monuments look at night. And maybe travelers would do this and take an hour with a taxi. It's 35, 40 euros. But those bus tours that we recommend, get on, jump on, off, 50 people, they're ridiculous. I mean, Paris Vision tours at night, where they have 12 languages going in your ears and this kind of thing. We're 30 euros a person, so this is cheaper, and you have a cab to yourself at night. And then we write the route out for you and give you instructions in French and just give it to the taxi driver and he follows it. It's great fun. I get great feedback on it. So consider that. Rick even brought a bottle of champagne the last time we did it, because we didn't drink in the car. We popped the cork in front of the Louvre Museum. Anyway, so there are a variety of ways to see the city at light at night. All right. All right. That's a look at Paris. Now, if you're debating how long to go in Paris, go longer. Actually, in a serious way, what I mean is, if you're thinking about staying 4 or 5 nights, book 5. You can always cut off a night before you go. You can't add one on very easily toward the end. So guess long and peel back if you have to on your hotel reservation. There's so much in the city that you can't, you won't exhaust the possibilities. Okay, let's head out to see the country of France now. I've got another half an hour to give you explanation of heading west from the Loire, from downtown Paris, up the Seine River Valley, heading into Normandy, I'll go back up. I'm going to follow this in reverse direction. I'm going to do this loop, the heart of France, and expand it a little bit for the rest of this talk for you today. Let's head out to Giverny first, and then to the Normandy coast. The Seine River Valley is a lovely romp. West of Paris. About an hour west of Paris is Claude Monet's gardens, where the last 40 years of his life, he cultivated his art and his flowers at the gardens of Giverny, where you can see man's inspiration come to life in front of you. Remarkable. For people from April all the way through October, the flowers are beautiful at Giverny. It's closed in the other seasons, but it's open 7 days a week otherwise. This is a great first stop introduction to Normandy for most people. If you're flying into Paris and you're getting your car at the airport, and that's what you're doing, you could probably pull this off and then sleep in Giverny for the night. I wouldn't try to do too much more. I list a couple of hotels in the small town of Giverny, and I think you would probably find that worthwhile. Otherwise, I love ending up at the coast where the River Seine meets the Atlantic Ocean at the town of Honfleur. Honfleur is the phonetic or literal pronunciation of this lovely little village, about 10,000 people, with just charming architecture. The word charming, if it fits in one place, boy, is it Honfleur. And a great way to get over jet lag, by the way. Again, if I'm flying into Paris, France, and I'm landing in Paris, it's a lot easier to get over jet lag in the countryside than it is in downtown Paris. The chances of mistake are much less in the countryside. Oh, I know, I really want to warn you. Coming in from the airport in Paris, don't put your money belt in your suitcase. They are just waiting for us. I met two different people who had their bags picked on the subway ride in from the airport. And they had their money belt, they just got off the airplane. They're dazed and, I'll get it on before I go out and sightsee. Well, they're waiting for you on the subway sometimes. It's not aggressive crime. They're very good at this. So be smart if you're not taking a taxi, and be very smart coming in from the airport. That's good advice. And I see it every year. Okay, back to Honfleur. Let's look. This is one of the only wooden Gothic church that I've ever seen. And it's beautiful. It was built by shipwrights because the history of Honfleur is one of shipping. And there are the double hulls. You could turn this church over. It's all wood except for a couple of stone pillars, and it would float. There's a lovely little museum of Impressionist art, the Eugene Boudin Museum. This fellow was actually Claude Monet's one of his mentors. And there's a museum to his credit here where they painted scenes, because this is what the beach looks like in Deauville and Trouville, just south of Honfleur, where you can see his art. And it's a lovely introduction to Impressionist art, I think, particularly maybe if you've been to Giverny, where there are, by the way, no paintings at Claude Monet's home at Giverny, but you get to see the flowers, and all that inspired his art. And at night, what a great way to start your trip, to have dinner on the old port, on the harbor in Honfleur, at one of the great restaurants that Steve and Rick recommend in the France book. And all of this now that I'm telling you, the rest of this talk today is in our France book. An hour south of there, an hour and a half, is this beautiful coast on the Normandy part of France, due west of Paris, where you can walk on trails just like this and imagine what happened 70 years ago next year that was quite different than what you see on that very same coast below you today. The D-Day beaches are powerful. You need time here. Day tripping it from Paris doesn't work for me, but it's possible. I think most people who do that wish they would have spent at least a night on the D-Day beaches or nearby so that they could take more time. Understandably, we don't always have the time to do so. So if your only chance is to day trip from Paris, I would still take advantage of it. The beaches are presented through its museums and villages and local guides in such an excellent way in fluent English that for most Americans, this is a highlight of their trip. 70 years ago, it will be next year in 2014, with exhibits, museums modernizing themselves, adding more exhibits every year to the remarkable invasion, the largest seaborne invasion ever, that established a foothold for the Allies in World War II, that certainly helped them turn the tide in World War II and have a victorious effort against the Germans and Nazis. A local guide here, this is Dale Holberg, many of them are British that I recommend in the book, is indispensable if this matters to you. It's really, there's so much to it. And I list about 10 different local guides because they're so popular. Even if you're driving your car and have your own car and don't need the transportation that they often offer, they can get in your car with you. It's a little bit less if they don't have to drive their minivans and this kind of thing. Seriously consider a day with a guide like this. You can do a half day with most of them. You're going to want a full day, I guarantee you, because it's so, it's riveting. From the Arromanches, the harbor that was artificially constructed by the Allies overnight, by the Brits in particular in World War II. Look at this right here. They towed across these huge hunks of concrete, football-sized things of concrete, and old battleships and sunk them after bombing the smithereens out of the inland, so the Germans weren't around, to create this artificial harbor somewhere where the Germans wouldn't guess that they would try to land. And today they thought they would last for a couple months, something like this. They're still floating today out there. And they're, in fact, front and center right in front of you when you walk on the beach. In fact, so much, there's over 150,000 tons of material that they've pulled off the D-Day beaches of metal and rust and wire and this kind of stuff. There's still thousands and thousands of tons left, apparently, on those beaches today from that battle, right? You can tour. We do, I think, a good job in our France book, if you don't have a local guide, of taking you along the beaches to the strategic locations like Lons-sur-Mer here, the Atlantic Wall defense of Adolf Hitler. You're going to learn a lot about World War II history through the D-Day beaches, and you're going to be captivated by them, I am sure. For most Americans, this is one of the two highlights on the D-Day beaches. This is the Pointe du Hoc, where the Rangers had to attack this one point right here where there was 5 machine guns, actually, that were positioned on that one point of land that could reach out 13 miles into the ocean and, of course, protect a great part of the beaches that the Allies wanted to take. So this was a huge, important, the Pointe du Hoc mission for them, and they did eventually take it and succeed. And you can go to the top right here and to see the observation tower that the Germans used to relay signals to their guns behind them to shoot. It's very moving, very powerful. And again, the more information you have, the more meaningful this site in particular becomes. To the other important site for Americans is to the American Cemetery on the D-Day beaches, where about 10,000 Americans, and this is Preston Nyland. You can see maybe the name on the cross. He's one of the brothers from the movie Saving Private Ryan, if you remember, that the Nyland brothers that Tom Hanks was trying to rescue or get out of the war. Powerful site is the American Cemetery here. It's not just powerful because it's beautiful and imagine 10,000 Americans at this point buried here. Most of them were repatriated home, who gave their life to people they didn't know in a cause that maybe they didn't understand. The cemetery does a brilliant job because there's a visitor center now there that tells the stories of a variety of the men who died in this battle and brings it to life and makes that personal connection rather than the airplanes or the guns and the size of the bullets and the size of the cannons and this kind of thing. They do a brilliant job at the American Cemetery. And then you can drop down these steps to the beaches below. And that's the scene where most of the movie of Saving Private Ryan takes place, right below that's Omaha Beach that you're looking at here. And here's the museum that I mentioned before at the American Cemetery. Then in Normandy, just inland, the first city to be freed, Bayeux. It's beautiful Romanesque cathedral, Gothic, Norman Gothic. And the tapestry of Bayeux, for an image to different invasion of 1,000 years earlier. William the Conqueror's invasion and defeat of Harold at the Battle of Hastings. This tapestry from the 1100s is remarkable because it tells us apparently more about the Middle Ages than almost any other single document that we have. And it's just right inland of the D-Day beaches. Bayeux, by the way, and its cathedral in the town makes a great base for seeing the D-Day beaches from. Lovely little town. I think you'll enjoy it. An hour and a half south of there, and people have been doing for over 1,000 years, making the pilgrimage to this site, just like you may want to do. And don't arrive before 5 is my lesson to you, to the island abbey of Mont Saint-Michel that is being recreated as an island again thanks to a new construction project where they have now pretty much blown up the causeway that led to it and allowing the water to circulate around this island abbey. Arrive after 5. It does look just as spectacular in person as it appears in images like this. If you arrive before 5, you'll run into this kind of thing. Sort of Tijuana in France, I'd like to say, since I'm from San Diego. Arrive after 5 and the same street looks like that. It's really a remarkable advantage. It is an entirely different experience you'll have by arriving after 5, seeing the Abbey at the last visit of the day, when it's open till about 6 or 7, depends on the time of year you are, spending the night on the island. Spend the night on or near the island. Have dinner, then come out below and see it floodlit every night. And soon it really will be an island again for you to visit. Oh, it's beautiful. It's sensational. And it's amazing how much money and effort the French are putting into this island abbey. You can, from the island of Mont Saint-Michel, I'm on my way to the Loire Valley, but I'm making a short detour around the rugged coast of Brittany, stopping for just a taste of Brittany, which borders Normandy, seeing the beautiful rugged coastline, stopping in the beautiful medieval town of Dinan, D-I-N-A-N, walking its wall, having a crepe, doing the Brittany thing, because I only have so much time, just touching into Brittany, and then heading out to the land of 1,000 chateaus in the Loire Valley, where you can explore 1,000 different, no, you can't explore 1,000 chateaus, but there are hundreds of them open to visitors today in the Loire Valley, right? Here's the place that I mentioned before where there are many chateaux for you to sleep in. Take advantage of one of them. That is a hotel, been converted to a hotel. A lot of these chateaus, they don't know what to do with them. Some of them are even youth hostels. There are a variety of ways to stay in a 700-year-old building in the Loire Valley, and there's no greater number of them than in the Loire Valley today, where you can have this kind of 3 or 4-star hotels, kind of have this experience. For many of us, I like using Amboise as the base for my Loire Valley explorations. The little village of Amboise is about 10,000 people. It's got great rail service, good bus service. It's central to most of the key chateaux that I want to see, and it's a lovely little town to call home. We do a walking tour of Amboise in the book that I think you'll enjoy to get you oriented. It's also famous as the place where Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 2 years of his life, under the tutelage of the French Renaissance King Francois I. And you can visit his home, the Clos Lucé, and go down in the basement and see, recreated, thanks to money from IBM about 20 years ago, 40 of his inventions, 500 years ago, written right to left, right in his notes, that this Roman candle of brilliance came up with 500 years ago. The tank, I don't know how many that I have in this images here. No, I just have the next. It's remarkable, the things that this man thought of. So far ahead of his time. Flying machines, the tank, on and on it goes, and you'll be just very impressed with good English information about those inventions in the town of Amboise. It's a great place to stay, not just because of that. There's a chateau of its own, but I'd call that secondary or even tertiary in terms of importance. The key chateau that you want to see, and you're in the Loire Valley for chateau. That's why you're here to see. Chateau are like palaces, right? A chateau fort is a medieval castle for defensive purposes. When they put the word fort after it, chateau fort, a chateau in and of itself generally means a palace, built after the invention of gunpowder so that we just had nice places to sleep. Not particularly important for defensive purposes. This is the most important one for you to see. It's a 15-minute drive from Amboise, pardon me. This is the chateau of Chenonceau, arcing over the Cher River of like Sunny and Cher, sounding name, and it is the standout of all the chateaux in the Loire Valley. Come early. It's so popular. It opens at 9. Arrive about 10 of 9. You'll do fine. You'll have the place to yourself. You want about an hour and a half here. It's really glorious. It has everything. The gardens are beautiful. The rooms, the interior is stunning. You have everything in this chateau. The kitchen is even great. And I'm not that much into kitchens. But I even found this kitchen to be really terrific. You'll want a good hour, hour and a half at the chateau. It's also bikeable, by the way, from Amboise. I don't think it's a great bike ride, but if it takes an hour to get there, and there's a bit of an uphill, but it's not bad. If you really want to ride a bike between Chateau and the Loire Valley, this would be one place to consider, right? Then, this is too far to ride from there. The largest, the granddaddy of them all at Chambord. This is the King's Castle. These are both from the 1500s, by the way. Chambord was built for King Francois I. It took most of France's gross national product for like 3 years to build. 1,800 workmen working for 18 straight months, nonstop at this place, right? 440 rooms, 360 chimneys. You could have a fire in a different room every day of the year. A lot of fireplaces because the reason it was built was for hunting. Hunting's done in the winter when the leaves fall off the trees. So you can see those animals better. Problem is it's cold. You need a lot of chimneys to heat your guests. And if you're a king, and you have friends coming over, they probably have a big entourage because they're kings too. So you need 440 rooms. So you need lots of chimneys to keep them warm. That explains something that was what is with this? A little bit of information goes a long way, is my point there. And we do a walking tour of this in our guidebook in France. It is the King's Castle. It is grand. It's nowhere near as beautiful or serene and as intimate as Chenonceau. Trust me, you'll like Chenonceau better. But you want to see this because it is so impressive. And going up on the rooftop, by the way, up there, you can climb on the rooftop amidst all those spires. It's quite a stunning experience. And they also do regularly from April through September, jousting tournaments and things on horseback behind the chateau. So you get a sense of something else beyond just seeing the chateau when you're there. Another base I suggest in the Loire Valley is Chinon, Chinon. This is the other base because there's so much. The Loire Valley is pretty big. And I would rather do 2 nights in Amboise and 2 nights in Chinon to take in these other castles that I think you're going to find interesting. And I like this town of Chinon. This castle is, well, we'll talk about it in a moment, obviously from the defensive castle era. Here's the town of Chinon that I'm looking on the Vienne River. The Loire Valley is named after the Loire River, which, by the way, separates North from South France, officially designating. But the area is so much more a variety of rivers above and beyond the Loire River. Chinon is a nice town, Chinon again, and the castle of Chinon I like because of its history and that it's different than a palace. I'm seeing a defensive castle, and it's also got more history than anything around. Richard the Lionheart slept here. Joan of Arc stayed here, and she's the most famous resident because she spent the most time here. Eleanor of Aquitaine stayed here. These are important figures to understand. You know those names. Learn about them. What's the relationship between Richard the Lionheart and Eleanor of Aquitaine? Understand this stuff. This is where they were based for a while. That's why Chinon matters in part. It's also a neat town to visit, and it's also the best base for bike riders. A lot of people want to bike ride in the Loire Valley. That's why I got to this. Ride from here. There's good trails right along the river and canals throughout this area for seeing chateau. And this is one chateau, even if you don't stay in Chinon, that you're going to probably want to see. These are the greatest gardens. Many of the chateaux in the Loire Valley have great gardens. And my advice to you is when you contemplate all the different chateaux that you could see, and I think we described 15 in the book. And we like to say 3, maybe 4 for a big person is the right dosage of chateau on your trip because they start looking the same after a while. I mean, how many Louis XIV chests and armoires can you look at, right? Find variety in this. So the Chenonceau Chateau is lovely. It's sort of feminine, arcs over the river. The big Chambord is a good one. Here's one for gardens. Here's the best of the garden chateau. Although if you're really a gardener, you're going to want to see some of the other ones I recommend, which are much more intimate as well. This is Villandry, and it's a bike ride away, a short hop away, relatively speaking, from the town of Chinon. And floating on its reflecting pool, Azay-le-Rideau Chateau. The reason I have this one, there are so many, we could go on and on. They're all a little bit different. This one has a sound and light show most nights of the year when you'd be traveling. Let's call it May through September. And so it extends your day till 11 o'clock at night. And it's kind of fun to wander through where they play medieval music, or Renaissance, I should say, music, and show images on the walls, and maybe they have a little bit of a story that they're telling you in French and maybe English as they do these sound and light shows. Many of the chateaux in the Loire Valley have some sort of night event. Check in on that when you're traveling. You'd be surprised. It's a great way of extending your day, as I mentioned before. This is one of the better ones, though. All right, so that's what we've done. We've done Paris. I've taken you outside all the way down to Chinon. Now I'm picking up on our Loire to the South France tour just to get you oriented. Here's where we are. We're still fairly far north in the country, even though the Loire River is supposed to officially separate north from south. I'm just going to tap into to give you an idea. This is a 5-hour drive. right? It's about a 6-hour train trip to make it from the Loire Valley, Chinon, to Sarlat in the Dordogne region. Let's go there. On your way, 2/3 of the way there, is an important site for most travelers. June 10th, 1944, 4 days after D-Day. In a village that looked just like this, average everyday life was happening to the people. They were in an occupied part of France by the Germans. The Germans rounded up everybody in the village and murdered them all, machine gunned them to death and burned them to death. The fact that this happened wasn't so unusual. It happened in a variety of places in Italy and France, etc. And it happened in Spain in different circumstances as well under Franco. What is amazing is they left the town exactly as they found it on June 10th, 1944. So you wander through this town, and it's a trip through the past. And of course, the point of the town is to remember and not forget that these kinds of things happened. It's not a Holocaust museum. It's not a museum of World War II. It's a museum to the atrocities that one group of men in humankind inflicted on another. Oradour-sur-Glane is the name of the village. There's now a great museum that gives an introduction to it all. But wandering through the town of 642 people that's surprisingly large is a powerful thing to do. Before you come down to the beautiful part of the Dordogne region here, a beautiful part of France, I should say. This area is glorious castles from the Middle Ages. Like, look at that one, Baynac, wow. And the Dordogne region, it's also traditions running deep here. This is the land of foie gras, right? And truffles. And the town of Sarlat makes a great base for most people. I love this town. The Dordogne is often people's favorite part of France, pardon me, because it is what they weren't expecting. They had no idea what to expect, I should say. So the town of Sarlat, I'll back up one, is about 10,000 people in the heart of this region. Now you're in the southern part of France. It's distinctly warmer here. The town of Sarlat has a great market day on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Arrive Tuesday night or Friday night and wake up to the market on the same square the next morning and throughout all the walking streets of the town of Sarlat. This is a highlight. This is one of the great market days in France. I list several of them. This is certainly one of them. This is what I mentioned before, foie gras, truffles. A lot of great delicacies are here. And it's also an inexpensive part of France, by the way, to eat out well and to sleep in because it's really remote and very rural. So the hotel tourist industry is really eager to have you, and there's lots of competition. So I find hotel prices for 60 euros for a really nice room to be normal in this area. That's a good deal. Frankly, anything, you leave Paris and it's almost like half the price, by the way, in most other parts of France in the countryside. You're going to see this dramatic difference. When you stay in Paris, don't let the sticker shock or whatever you call that worry you, because the rest of France will save you from that. One of my favorite things to do, we stay 3 nights on our tour in the Dordogne region, is to go canoeing. It's a beautiful area to eat out in and to wander the market in Sarlat, but spend a day on a canoe. Get out of your car, get out of the train and the bus. They'll pick you up in Sarlat, they'll pick you up anywhere, put you in the canoe, float down the river for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. You can see what the river looks like. It's pretty mellow if you're up for it. And you can get out at a variety of castles on your way or villages, have lunch, pull your little canoe back in, and then end up here at the town of Baynac, climb up to the castle top, and tour a true medieval castle. It's beautifully preserved to make it look just like it did really to give you the sense of the Middle Ages after the Loire Valley, an interior castle that's not totally ruined that you can see from this era. This is the castle of Baynac, and it does really a stunning job of giving you a sense of this era of life and what it was like to have lived here. And it has absolutely stunning views over the Dordogne Valley below. By the way, it is this valley that I showed you a picture of a restaurant earlier in the town just upriver from here of Dôme, when I said I like to find good, beautiful, picturesque places for dinner. All right, a day on the canoe, part of a day for the market day, Saturday or Wednesday, and then a full day for the prehistoric caves that you can see. There are 4 caves left within a reasonable drive of Sarlat that you can see original cave art from. Yes, there is a copycat cave that they've done exquisitely of the caves of Lascaux. It's great to see. It's an English tour. It's easy to understand, and they've replicated the original cave of Lascaux perfectly. But you can go and see 4 original caves and start at the Museum, though, of Prehistory in the town of Les Aisies and get your prehistoric history lesson going, and then go out and see 1 or 2 of the caves if you want to. Font de Gaume, this is the cave I'm showing you here now. It's my favorite cave. It's listed in the book, is undergoing a series of reductions in the number of people allowed in. I don't even think you can make reservations there anymore. If you have the France book for 2013, I think they've cut off any reservations at all. You just have to be first in line in the morning. And you can usually go there at 8 o'clock and get a reservation for the next day. If it matters for you to see Font de Gaume, learn the latest. It's evolving rapidly, but this cave, and most caves like this, it's about a 50-yard walk in. So if agoraphobia is across you, better be ready for it, and be ready for colder temperatures, and be ready to see really amazing paintings and drawings like this from 14 to 16,000 years ago. Or maybe this. Astonishing. Something so realistically done, so well done, that many years old. And again, 4 different caves where you can see a variety of different polychrome or black on white prehistoric art. The museum in Les Aisies sets the stage for the rest of the sightseeing in the Dordogne region. Now I'm going to wrap up my talk just with going back to the eastern side for the heart of France, coming back to Paris. How am I doing? I got 5 minutes. I should be just about right to wrap this up. I've tossed in a surprise for you. I don't think this was in the description, but I wanted to show this to you because I just think whenever I go here, it's unusual, it's amazing, are the French Alps. And this will take me 2 minutes to show you. But if you were at all interested in getting up into Alps and you were traveling in France and you thought, well, I'll give this a consideration. Maybe you'll go now because I've pushed you over the edge. Metaphorically speaking, or whatever. 2 ways to see the French Alps. Through its favorite, best lakefront city of Annecy, with a bike trail that runs all the way along the lake. Look at this. And here you are, you're about 3,000 feet at this level. And it's France's answer to like Lucerne, the beautiful city in Switzerland, only I think more beautiful. And Annecy's, look at this. And absolutely, it's the prettiest city you've never heard of. That's what I like to describe of this place. 50,000 people, canals running through it, the lead in from the lake, or the lead out to the lake, the canals do. It is a glorious place. And I'm going to back up here. My favorite thing to do here is to take a bike and ride, it's like riding around Green Lake. Ride along the lake for about 40 minutes, and then get on a lake steamer, roll my bike onto it, and ride the boat back into Annecy. What a beautiful way to spend half of a day, part of a day. And then troll the streets in the inland of the town of Annecy. A-N-N-E-C-Y. It's a beautiful place. But your real destination, your real goal, is to get to the High Alps. And this is ground zero for alpine excitement anywhere in Europe. The first Winter Olympics were here in 1924. There's a reason for it. It's the highest point in Europe, and it is astonishing. You're looking at Mont Blanc at 15,800 feet right there, and this is the town of Chamonix, where every street is named after a mountain climber, and everybody in the village seems to have an ice axe in their hand. I mean it. If you're into the outdoors, you're home here. These people are nuts. They go on skis off parachutes year-round. You're going to see stuff in the air that you can't believe. There is a love of life in the outdoors here that I've never seen attacked in a way that it is in Chamonix. And for you, oh yes, at night you can have the fondue, the famous fondue that, the Alpine culture is not Swiss or French, it's Alpine, right? It's Alpine. So you'll have the same thing that you think of as Swiss in France because you're in the mountains naturally, and you drink the same kind of white wines you would drink in Switzerland. But the next day you're going early because you're going to the edge of Mont Blanc. You have to transfer to 2 different cable cars to get to 12,900 feet. And then you're going to transfer. By the way, at 12,000 some odd feet, you can walk around the great view platforms and see views over the Matterhorn, Mont Blanc, and all these peaks because you're looking into Switzerland, Italy, and France below you. And you're saying, this is, Steve was right, this is a pretty good view from up here. But the view doesn't end right there. There's restaurants and gift shops and things right there. And it's astonishing to me that they could build structures at that elevation, right? But I don't have all my images because I'm trying to do this briefly. But the best part of this is you can then hop into the little teacup cars, as I call them. And for 45 minutes, dangle with you and your partner at 12,800 feet all the way to Italy. We used to have to say, bring your passport. Now, with the European Union, we don't have to have passports anywhere between France and Italy. This is one of those experiences that I don't know that you can get anywhere else, certainly in Europe. And then double back. You have to come back, by the way. I used to say you can go back down, and then you continue your trip on, pack light, because these cards aren't that big. Take your bag with you, and drop down into Este, and then Courmayeur, then Este, on the Italian side, and continue your trip. What a way to cross a border. Now, for the next year at least, though, they're doing construction on the Italian side, so you have to double back, which most of us want to do anyway, because when you double back, then you go down halfway and take this hike for about 2.5 hours. If you're a hiker, it's not a hard hike, but you want to be a hiker, meaning it's up and down, but it's really a manageable hike. And you're not going all the way down to the largest glacier in France, the Mer de Glace below, but it's an astonishing walk. If you've gone on the Teacups in the morning, come down halfway, do this walk. It's the same elevation that you start at, so you end up in the same elevation, and then take a cogwheel train back down into Chamonix. That is a great day. And then I'm going to wrap this talk up with my home region of Burgundy, where it is the quintessential everything France seems to be rolled into one region here, I think. Romanesque architecture and glorious simple churches like this. Canals that people dream of going on boats on like this. This, by the way, is our village, where we live, where my parents live. And towns like Beaune, the capital of wine production in Burgundy. Lovely, 25,000 citizen town with lots of great sights, but mostly it's just a lovely place to be. The most important sight to see in Beaune is the medieval hospital, the Hôtel Dieu, where in 1443 they built a hospital. The first one I know of. I'm sure there were others built. But to take care of the people during the 100 Years' War between France and England who were left distraught, and other things that left them sick, and brought them inside to beds like this, and they'd often have 2 or 3 persons to the beds, and the nuns, of course, were the first nurses, and bloodletting was the first sort of medical practice used in those days. You can see bloodletting tools, and you can imagine when you're in here that having 3 people to a bed like one of these, guys sharing a twin bed, before the understanding of contagion, you were better off outside the hospital. You really were. There's no question about it. But it's a glorious construction and a peek inside of medieval Europe. Really, it is pre-Renaissance at this point, that you don't get in most other places, all right? And you can be really cool on your bicycle and rent a bike. This is my favorite place in France to rent a bicycle. Yes, I live in this area when I'm researching, and I know it well, but all of these wine roads like this that are really for wine vehicles, tractors and things like that, are perfect for bike riding. Normal cars don't go on them. They're too much of a headache for cars. So it's like the spaghetti network of roads is endless, that you can go from village, you can even ride out to the castle of La Roche-Pau, but mostly it's village to village in the wine country of Burgundy, and meet some of my favorite people. I think I probably do more than I need to do in the book on my favorite winemakers because we have the house in this region. But if Burgundian wines turn you on at all, you'll find their remarkable values and they're lovely people wanting to greet you. And maybe your last meal in France will be escargot, one of the famous meals like beef Burgundy, escargot, coq au vin, all of these famous dishes that are Burgundian. What a great way to end a trip. Because from Beaune to Paris is a bullet train. It takes an hour and a half to get there. Oh, I forgot my last little bit. I want to do this really quickly. One of the great new sites in Burgundy and in Europe, I was going to take you back to Paris just too quickly before I wrap this up, is the the castle of Guédelon. This is the coolest project I know of, and you really need to pay attention. You really want to think about this, and I see kids in the audience. We do a kid-friendly trip in Europe today for family is from Rome to Paris. And that trip from Rome to Paris in 14 days, we've decided is so important to spend half a day of that 14-day tour right here at Guédelon, because it's a castle that's being built today based on this plan of Philippe Auguste from 12,001. Okay, that's kind of neat. But they're doing it in exactly the same tools and techniques used in those days. So you can see the guys taking stone out of the quarry, dressing the stone, going on the squirrel wheel and raising it up the tower, being built before your very eyes. The point of the project is to try to understand better castle construction techniques from 800 years ago, and to show us and allow us to learn as well. Guides take you through in English. Self-guided tours are possible on your own. Kids go crazy here. And now it'll take 40 years to build, or 35 years, pardon me. They're into year 15 or 16. This tower is now, this is 5 years old, is like 30 feet tall. It's twice as tall now. So you can keep going back time and again if you want to, and you can see the thing grow if you want to. They say that after this is done, they're going to build an abbey. How cool. How about that? Vive la France, right? Well, there you are. That name of that castle, by the way, is Guédelon, and it's really about halfway between Paris and Beaune, the wine capital of Burgundy. And I've described it well, I think, in the France book. So there we are. So, ending our trip in Paris. Great way to bookend your trip, starting and end in Paris, maybe. The Eiffel Tower is always interesting, and so is this country. It takes a lot of books of ours to describe it to you in the way we've done. And, oh yes, things change rapidly when we're updating the books all the time. I've just finished the Paris book for 2000. No, I'm not finished. We're still researching the Paris book. I've got a researcher over there. But the work has to be done by like June. Well, after June of this year, before you go next year, things are going to change. So we update our book on our website. Important changes we list on our website, and hope you use that. If you're interested in one of our tours out in the lobby, we have people who know all about our tours to take you to all the destinations I talked about today. And we have our tour catalog out there as well that can get you excited. So whether you go with a group preferably one of our groups, or on your own to France in 2013 or 14. I know you'll have a great trip because of those waiters, not in spite of them. Merci beaucoup, everybody, for your attention. I really appreciate it.